Today's story is one you won't be able to stop listening to. Let's begin. The sound of the organ echoed through the beautiful Church of Archangel Michael. Celeste stood at the altar, her hands shaking slightly as they touched the smooth silk of her cream-colored wedding dress. 200 guests looked at her, family, friends, coworkers. Everyone was waiting for the moment she would become the wife of Nikolai Ryabinin. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful light across the marble floor. But Celeste wasn't smiling. Her heart wasn't beating from joy. It was full of fear, full of a heavy truth she could no longer ignore. How long had they lied to her? As she looked over the crowd, her eyes landed on her mother, Anna, sitting in the front row. Anna wore an elegant emerald green dress and had a bright, proud smile on her face. She looked like the perfect loving mom. Just yesterday, Celeste would have believed that smile. Just yesterday, she still believed mothers were supposed to protect their daughters, and that love was something sacred. Nikolai gently squeezed her hand. His blue eyes looked warm and full of love, or at least what she once believed was love. He leaned in and whispered, "Are you ready?" His voice was steady and confident, the same voice that had won her over 3 years ago. Celeste looked at him closely, at the sharp line of his jaw she used to trace with her fingers, at the lips that once promised her forever. And suddenly, everything became painfully, perfectly clear. She whispered back, calmly but firmly, "I'm more ready than you think." Only 3 months ago, Celeste had been truly happy. At 28, Celeste Marion Darren felt like her life was on track. She was the daughter her parents had always wanted. She graduated top of her class from Moscow State University, where she studied languages. She was the editor-in-chief of a respected publishing house, and she had just gotten engaged to Nikolai Ryabinin, the golden boy everyone admired. Their engagement felt like a dream come true. Nikolai, 31, was incredibly handsome. He was the son of Judge Karetin Ryabinin and a well-known philanthropist, Victoria Ryabinina. He worked as a high-level lawyer at one of the best firms in Moscow. He drove a BMW and had proposed to Celeste at the Bolshoi Theater during the intermission of Swan Lake, her favorite ballet. "You two are going to have such a wonderful life together," her mother had said that night, admiring the sparkling 2-carat diamond ring. "The Ryabinins are such a respectable family." Her mom had said, "You're doing great, dear." Not "I'm so happy for you," or "he's perfect for you." Just, "You're doing great." As if Celeste had made a good business move, not found the love of her life. Her father, priest Vasily Darren, was more quiet but just as pleased. He believed deeply in family values and traditional morals. To him, Celeste marrying into such a respected family was like the reward for a lifetime of doing things right. He had told Celeste, "Nikolai is a good man," and when he hugged her after dinner that night, the kind of big, warm hug only dads can give, he felt sure she loved Nikolai. And, maybe more importantly, that Nikolai loved her. Words that would later feel like poison in her mouth. The next 2 months were filled with wedding planning. Celeste's mom threw herself into it with full energy, sweet but overwhelming. She wanted to handle everything: the flowers, the food, the music, even the dress fittings. "This is every mother's dream," she said again and again while flipping through magazines and calling vendors, planning the perfect wedding. Celeste appreciated her mom's help, even when she didn't always agree with her choices. When Celeste suggested using wildflowers for her bouquet, her mom, Anna, said no. It had to be white roses with shiny fake diamonds. When Celeste asked for a simple string quartet to play music, Anna went ahead and hired a full orchestra. And when Celeste said she wanted to write her own wedding vows, Anna smiled and said, "Traditional vows are more elegant, sweetheart. Trust me, Mom knows best." It was the same smile Celeste had inherited. Nikolai didn't seem bothered by any of this. In fact, he seemed amused by how her family worked. He'd often show up at their house without warning, charming Celeste's parents with funny stories from his law firm and always complimenting Anna's cooking. He and Anna would spend a lot of time in the kitchen together, talking and laughing, while Celeste finished up work calls or read through manuscripts. Their laughter echoed through the house like music. One evening, as he and Celeste walked through Sokolniki Park, the same place he'd first asked her out, he told her how amazing her mom was. "She really wants everything to be perfect for us," he said. Celeste smiled and squeezed his hand. "She's always been like that," she replied. When Celeste was a kid, Anna would spend weeks planning her birthday parties. Everything had to be just right, and it always was. Celeste believed that with all her heart. Nikolai stopped walking, turned to face her, gently held her face in his hands, and said she was perfect, too, just like her mom. Celeste should have noticed how often he talked about her mother. She should have questioned the way he looked at Anna when she laughed, or how he always brought the perfect wine that made her glow with happiness. But Celeste was in love, and love, as she was starting to learn, can make people blind. The first crack in that love appeared 3 weeks before the wedding. Celeste dropped by her parents' house after work to go over the seating arrangements. She was carrying a bunch of invitations and had her laptop bag full of work papers. The house was strangely quiet when she walked in. "Mom? Dad?" she called, setting her bags down in the hallway. Her mom called back from the kitchen, "Sweetheart." But her voice sounded different, quick, excited, almost nervous. Celeste walked in and saw Anna standing at the sink with her back turned, washing dishes that already looked clean. Her hair, usually styled perfectly, was a little messy. When she turned around, her cheeks were flushed pink. She smiled and said she hadn't expected Celeste to come so early. Celeste looked at her watch. "It's 6 o'clock. I always come at this time on Wednesdays." "Right, of course," Anna said, drying her hands on a towel and not meeting Celeste's eyes. Celeste's dad was at a church board meeting, so it was just the two of them, but something felt off. The kitchen smelled different. It was the usual scent of her mom's vanilla candles, but there was also something else, something warm, masculine, expensive. Celeste sat at the kitchen island and asked, "Has someone been here?" Anna hesitated for a second, then asked, "What?" Celeste repeated the question, and Anna quickly said, "No, just me." She turned back to the sink and asked how Celeste's day had gone. "Almost done," Celeste replied. But then she noticed something strange, a coffee mug on the counter. Not just any mug, it was part of their special china set. The one they only used for important guests. The mug was still warm. "Whose mug is this?" Celeste asked. Her mom's shoulders stiffened. "It's mine, of course." Celeste frowned. "You only drink tea in the evenings." "I was tired, needed caffeine," Anna said casually. But Celeste could feel the lie hanging between them. Her mom had never been a good liar. Celeste knew her habits like she knew her own heartbeat, the way she avoided eye contact, how her voice shook just a little, and how she suddenly became obsessed with cleaning dishes. Still, Celeste wanted to believe her. So she decided not to push it. "Okay," she said, opening the first invitation card. "Let's figure out the seating." The rest of the evening went on like normal, but something wasn't right. Celeste noticed her mom glancing at her phone constantly, her fingers tapping the counter without pause. Then, around 8 o'clock, Nikolai texted to say he was staying late at work and would see her tomorrow. And in that exact moment, Celeste saw her mom relax completely, like a weight had just been lifted from her shoulders. The second crack came just a week later. Nikolai started acting distant. He said work was getting too stressful. Their usual Thursday night dinners were canceled, twice. And he didn't show up for the cake tasting at the bakery. When Celeste called his office to check on him, the secretary said he had already left for the day. Worried, Celeste drove to his apartment in central Moscow. It was a fancy high-rise, and the concierge knew her by name. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like it took forever. She knocked on his door. No answer. So she used her key to go inside. "Nikolai," she called out. "Is everything okay?" The apartment was dark, but his car was in the garage. She had seen it. She called his name again as she walked through the apartment. It was the same space they had started planning to redecorate after the honeymoon. The living room was quiet, but there was a single glass of wine sitting on the coffee table. Just one. And on the rim of the glass was a lipstick mark, in a color Celeste didn't wear. She felt a twist in her stomach. She walked to his bedroom and tried the door. It was locked. That was strange. He never locked the bedroom door. Then she heard his voice through the wood, muffled, weak. "I'm here," he said. "Not feeling well. Maybe food poisoning." Celeste offered to take care of him. But Nikolai said no. He didn't want her to get sick too. He said he'd call her tomorrow. Celeste stood there, staring at the locked door. In all their years together, he'd never turned down her help when he was sick. He usually liked being cared for. He'd want comfort even with just a headache. Still, she chose to trust him. She set her worries aside, told the door, "Get well soon. I love you." "I love you too," he replied. But his words came too late. Because truth always finds a way out, like water leaking through cracks in the wall. And just 2 days before the wedding, the truth poured in. Celeste was at work, trying to focus on a manuscript about medieval poetry, when the phone rang. It was her mom.
"Hi, sweetheart."
"I need a favor," Anna said. Celeste asked what was wrong. Her mom said she had forgotten the wedding programs in her car and was out having lunch with Mrs. Chin from the flower committee. Could Celeste go pick them up? They're in a manila envelope on the passenger seat of the Mercedes. "Sure, no problem," Celeste replied. It was a 20-minute drive through Moscow traffic to her parents' house. She used her key to get through the gate and parked behind her mom's car. The Mercedes wasn't locked. That was normal in their safe neighborhood. Celeste opened the passenger door and immediately spotted the manila envelope. But something else caught her attention. Between the front seats was a small black leather notebook. She wouldn't have thought twice about it, except for one thing. Her name was written on the cover, in her mother's handwriting. Celeste's hands began to shake as she opened the notebook. The first page was dated 3 months ago, right after the engagement was announced. The words read, "Nikolai Ryabinin is everything I was supposed to marry, handsome, successful, and from a good family. Instead of chasing something special, I settled for Vasily and his life of routine. I told myself it was enough serving the middle class. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe I deserve something beautiful for once." The notebook slipped from Celeste's hands. She sat frozen in the driver's seat of her mom's car, staring at the handwriting. Her world felt like it was tilting. With shaking hands, she picked the notebook back up and kept reading. "He looks at me the way Vasily used to, before life wore us down. When Nikolai compliments my dress or my cooking, I remember what it's like to feel wanted." He stayed after Celeste went to work. We talked for hours about books, travel. He said, "I wasted my life in a small town."
He's right.
I know this is wrong. I know it would destroy Celeste if she found out. But when was the last time someone truly chose me? Not out of duty, not out of habit, out of real desire. Page after page, entry after entry. In her mother's neat handwriting, the slow, careful story of how she seduced her own daughter's fiancé. "He kissed me today. God forgive me." I kissed him back. We made love at his apartment while Celeste was at book club. He told me I was more passionate than any woman he'd ever been with. I felt alive again. Nikolai says that after the wedding, we'll find a way to be together. He says marrying Celeste is what's expected of him. But his heart? It's mine now. The last entry was dated yesterday. Tomorrow night, the night before the wedding, he'll come over. Vasily will be busy with the bachelor party. It'll be our last time together before Celeste becomes his wife. After that, we'll have to be careful. But we've come too far to stop now. Celeste closed the notebook. She didn't move. Outside, life went on like nothing had happened. Sprinklers watered the lawns. Kids rode bikes. Dogs barked at the mailman. A normal afternoon in the suburbs. But inside her heart, her entire world had collapsed. How long? That question screamed inside her mind. How long had they been laughing behind her back? She remembered every family dinner where they sat across from each other. Every stolen glance between them that she had been too trusting to question. She thought about her father, how he planned to walk her down the aisle tomorrow. He had no idea his wife was sleeping with their daughter's fiancé. Celeste realized she had been lied to, manipulated,
Betrayed.
by the two people who were supposed to love her more than anyone else in the world. And then the tears came. Hot, bitter tears. Tears that burned with betrayal. She cried until her chest hurt, until her mascara ran down her cheeks in dark streaks, until she was empty inside, except for one sharp, cold truth. They chose each other, not her. Now, she would choose herself. Celeste didn't go home that night. Instead, she booked a room at the Hotel Metropole under a fake name, paid in cash, and texted Nikolai saying she was planning a surprise for their anniversary.
It was an easy lie.
She had clearly learned from the best. In the hotel room, she laid out the evidence on the bed like a detective building a case. Her mother's diary. Screenshots of Nikolai's recent credit card charges. All the wedding expenses they had split and all the red flags she had ignored. The expensive cologne that didn't belong in her parents' kitchen. The lipstick on the wine glass in her apartment. Nikolai's sudden knowledge of her mother's favorite wine. They had both insisted on using traditional wedding vows, probably because they were afraid Celeste might reveal something in her own. She ordered room service and sat cross-legged on the bed, eating overpriced pasta while plotting exactly how she would ruin them both. The old Celeste would have confronted them alone, crying, begging for answers. But that girl was gone now. The old Celeste would have cried. She would have begged for answers. Maybe even forgiven them, eventually. She used to believe in second chances. She believed love could fix anything. But that version of Celeste was gone. She died the moment she read her mother's diary in the front seat of that Mercedes. The new Celeste knew better. Some betrayals are too deep to keep behind closed doors. This wasn't just a cheating fiancé or an unfaithful mother. This was something worse. Two people who used her, who made her part of their lie, who were planning to keep their affair going even after her wedding. They didn't just steal her happiness. They took her dignity. Well, if they wanted to play dirty, Celeste was ready. She had learned from the best. She picked up her phone and called her assistant at Meridian Publishing. "Genya," she said calmly, "can you pull the full guest list for tomorrow's wedding? Names, phone numbers, emails, social media, everything." Genya asked if something was wrong. Celeste smiled for the first time in days. "Everything's just fine," she said. And this time, she meant it. She told Genya she just wanted to make sure everyone had the info they needed for tomorrow. Next, she called her old college roommate, Priya, a freelance journalist now working in St. Petersburg. Priya picked up. "Oh my God. Your wedding's tomorrow. Are you freaking out with excitement?" Celeste replied calmly, "I need a favor. And I need you to be ready to ask some questions." Priya went quiet. "What kind of favor?" "I need you to be at the Church of the Archangel Michael tomorrow. Bring a camera. Bring your press card. Something newsworthy is about to happen and I want it all documented." Priya's voice lowered. "Celeste, you're scaring me." Celeste didn't flinch. "I'm not the one who should be scared." The last phone call was the hardest. She called her father. She knew he'd be home, probably just back from helping plan the bachelor party. He answered with a cheerful voice. "Hey, sweetheart. Should the father of the bride even be talking to his daughter the night before the wedding? Isn't that bad luck?" Celeste paused, then softly said his name. Her voice cracked just a little as she said, "I love you." She added, "No matter what happens tomorrow, please remember that. And please know, none of this is your fault." Her dad instantly grew serious. "What's going on, Celeste?"
Talk to me.
She smiled through the phone. "Nothing's happened. But tomorrow, everything will finally be okay." After the call, she sat in silence in her hotel room for a long time, thinking about justice, thinking about revenge, and how they're not the same. Revenge is hurting someone for what they've done. But justice, that's telling the truth, loud and clear, for everyone to hear. Tomorrow, Celeste would serve justice. And she'd do it with a smile. Before we continue, let us know in the comments, what country are you watching this from? We love seeing where our global family is tuning in from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring more epic stories like this to life. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the story. Celeste woke up at dawn and ordered coffee to her room. She sat by the window in a robe while the sun turned Moscow golden and pink. In 6 hours, She was supposed to become Nikolai Ryabinin's wife. But instead, she was about to become something more powerful, a woman who refuses to be fooled ever again. All morning, her phone buzzed with messages from her mom. "Good morning, beautiful bride. I hope you slept well. I can't wait to see you walk down the aisle tonight. The flowers are perfect. The musicians are getting ready. The photographer is set. Everything is exactly how it should be. I love you so much. Today will be the best day of your life." Each message felt like a knife wrapped in silk. At 9 a.m., Celeste took a long, hot shower, letting the water wash away the last pieces of who she used to be. When she got out, she looked in the mirror. For the first time in months, she looked like herself. Dark hair like her mom's. Blue eyes from her dad. A face people always said was pretty, but never amazing. Today, she would be amazing. She drove slowly through the center of Moscow toward the church. The air was cool and clear. Perfect wedding weather. The Church of the Archangel Michael looked stunning in the morning light. Its tall, stone towers stretched toward the sky like a prayer. Cars had already started to arrive. Early guests, family, vendors, all getting ready for what they thought would be a beautiful celebration. Celeste parked behind the church and sat quietly, watching people she'd known her whole life prepare for her big day. Mrs. Chin from the flower committee, Mr. Rodriguez, the neighbor from 20 years ago, Nikolai's law school friends, laughing and fixing their ties. All these people had taken time to support her. They cared. And they deserved to know the truth. She picked up her wedding dress, shoes, and makeup bag and entered the church through the side door leading to the bride's room. Inside, the room was buzzing. Her maid of honor, Katerina, was hanging the dress. The other bridesmaids were making coffee and setting up flowers. Katerina rushed over and hugged her. "Oh my God, you're glowing. How do you feel?" Celeste smiled. "It feels like everything is going to change today." It was the most honest thing she'd said in days. Katerina asked, "Where's your mom? I thought she'd be here already." Celeste checked her phone. No new messages from Anna since that sugary morning text. "She's probably still at home getting ready," Celeste said. "You know how she wants everything to be perfect." What she didn't say was this. She knew exactly where her mom was, because she had been tracking Nikolai's phone since last night. He spent the night at Celeste's family home. He left at 6:30 a.m., probably trying not to be seen by neighbors or his own dad. One last betrayal, done quietly like always. As her bridesmaids helped her into her dress, Celeste felt strangely calm. The smooth silk of the dress slid over Celeste's skin like armor. As her bridesmaids fastened the dozens of tiny pearl buttons down her back, she felt herself becoming someone new, stronger, more sure of herself. Of course, it was her mother who had picked the dress. It had a traditional shape with long sleeves, a dramatic cathedral train, and so many beads it sparkled like stars. Celeste had wanted something simpler, more modern. But her mother, Anna, had insisted. "This dress will look perfect in the photos," she said during the fitting. "Classic elegance never goes out of style." Now, Celeste finally understood why her mom cared so much about how she looked. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about the photos. Photos that would capture the moment her mother's plan came to life, the moment her future son-in-law was humiliated. Katerina carefully placed the veil on her head. It was the same one Celeste's grandmother had worn, fingertip length, delicate. "You look stunning," Katerina said. "Nikolai's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Celeste just murmured, "I hope so." At 11:30, the photographer arrived to take pictures before the ceremony. Celeste smiled for the camera, let him take pictures of what he thought was a joyful bride. But really, he was taking pictures of a woman getting ready for battle. Just before noon, her father arrived. "Hello, beautiful," he said from the doorway. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, silver hair perfectly styled. At 58, Father Vasily was still tall, handsome, and calm, the kind of man everyone in the church respected. He had been their priest for years, and now he stood there, proud to walk his daughter down the aisle. "You look radiant, sweetheart," he said, eyes filled with tears. I can't believe my little girl is getting married. The bridesmaids and photographer quietly stepped aside to give them a moment alone. Celeste took her father's hands. Hands that had blessed countless couples, that had held her when she scraped her knees as a kid, hands that had taught her to drive and pray and believe in kindness. "Dad," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you before we walk down the aisle." "Of course, honey," he said. "What is it?" Celeste reached into her wedding bag and pulled out her mother's diary. She handed it to him. "I found it in Mom's car yesterday," she said. He looked confused as he opened the small notebook, but then Celeste saw it. The change in his face. His skin went pale. His lips parted, hands shaking. He whispered her name, barely able to speak. This can't be. Your mother would never." Celeste gently told him to read the dates. To read everything. He dropped into a chair, still holding the diary. His eyes moved across the pages, page after page of his wife's betrayal. Celeste knelt beside him, her white dress pooling around them like spilled cream. After a long silence, he finally asked, "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday," she said. "I'm so sorry, Dad." He looked up at her, a man who had built his life and his ministry on the importance of marriage and family. Celeste saw something in his eyes crack, like glass under pressure. He whispered, "What are we going to do?" Celeste answered with quiet strength, "We're going to go to the altar. And we're going to let everyone see who Anna Darren and Nikolai Ryabinin really are." "No," her father said, shaken. "Let's think about this. This could become a scandal, public shame." Celeste replied, "But the shame doesn't belong to us. This is their shame, not ours." He stared at her for a long time, and she could tell he was remembering his own beliefs. The idea that family problems should always be handled in private, behind closed doors. He finally whispered, "There are 200 people out there." Celeste answered, "Those 200 people out there love us. They deserve to know the truth before they watch something they think is sacred." Her father asked, "What about my reputation?" Celeste replied, "Your reputation will be that you didn't let yourself be fooled, that you chose dignity and silence instead of lies." Just then, there was a knock at the door. The wedding coordinator announced, 5 minutes until the ceremony. Her father slowly stood up, his legs shaking. For a second, Celeste thought he might fall. But he straightened up and looked at her with pride. "You're braver than I ever was," he said softly. Celeste smiled. "I learned from the best." He reached out his hand, and together they walked to the doors of the sanctuary. Through the glass, Celeste could see the whole place filled with family and friends who had traveled from all over to be there. The altar was covered with white roses and fianites, just like her mom wanted. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon, the music echoing through the space. Nikolai stood at the altar in a perfect tuxedo, looking every bit like a loving groom. His groomsmen smiled beside him. Anna, Celeste's mom, sat in the front row in a green dress, gently wiping away tears with a lace handkerchief. She looked exactly how a proud mother should look, elegant, emotional, and full of joy. The coordinator opened the doors. The music changed. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in soft pink dresses, smiling at the guests. Then the wedding march began. Everyone stood. Her father whispered, "Here we go." Celeste whispered back, "Let's do this." As they walked down the aisle, she felt all eyes on her. Cameras flashed. People smiled. Nikolai's face lit up when he saw her, his blue eyes full of what looked like love. Anna dabbed her eyes again, the picture of a perfect, emotional mom. What incredible actors they are, Celeste thought. They should be on stage at the Bolshoi, not acting in my life. At the altar, her father handed her to Nikolai. That gesture was supposed to mean one man passing his daughter to another. But to Celeste, it felt like being handed over to the enemy. Archpriest Jenkins began the ceremony. His voice was calm and clear. "We are gathered today to witness the marriage of Nikolai Vilyamovich Ryabinin and Celeste Marianovna Darren." Celeste stood still, listening, waiting for the right moment. Nikolai gently squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Anna watched proudly from the front row. They had no idea what was coming. The priest said, Marriage is not something to take lightly, but something holy, created by God. Celeste thought, yes, let's talk about God's purpose, and how far you two have strayed from it. Then came the moment. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now, or forever hold your peace. This was it. The moment she had planned for. The chance to speak and tell the truth. But she stayed quiet. She let the ceremony continue. She wanted them to feel safe. To believe they had won. The priest turned to Nikolai. Do you take Celeste to be your wife, in sickness and in health, rich or poor, till death do you part? Nikolai looked at her and said firmly, yes, I do. I leave all others behind. The lie was so bold, Celeste almost laughed. Then the priest turned to her. Celeste, do you take Nikolai to be your husband, to love and stay true, no matter what, till death? This was her moment. To say yes and join a lie, or to tell the truth and burn it all down. Celeste looked around, at everyone watching. All the faces around Celeste were filled with excitement and joy. She glanced at her father in the front row. His eyes told her to stay strong. Then she looked at her mother, who was still wiping her eyes like she was in a movie. Actually, Celeste said, loud and clear through the temple's sound system. Everyone froze. Even the string quartet stopped playing. Nikolai squeezed her hand hard. His smile started to fade. Father Jenkins looked confused. Is everything okay? He asked. Yes, Celeste replied calmly. Everything's fine. She turned toward the guests, 200 people staring at her with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Celeste spoke clearly. I just realized that before I make the biggest promise of my life, I need to be completely honest. Nikolai's grip tightened painfully. What are you doing? He asked in a whisper. Celeste pulled her hand free and stepped closer to the microphone. Her mother sat very still, the handkerchief now resting quietly in her lap. I want to thank all of you for coming today, Celeste said. It means a lot that you took time out of your lives to be here and celebrate what you thought was the start of my happy future. A soft murmur went through the room. Celeste glanced at the hidden camera behind her. She had learned something important lately. Real happiness comes from truth, not fake smiles. And before we go any further with the ceremony, she continued, there's something you all need to know. Nikolai reached toward her, but she stepped away. Yesterday, I found out that my fiancé and my mother were having an affair. Gasps filled the temple like a bomb had gone off. Someone dropped their program. Celeste watched as Judge Ryabinin, Nikolai's father, went pale. He turned to look at his son. Celeste kept speaking, her voice getting stronger. I found my mom's diary. She wrote about their secret meetings, their lies, and their betrayal. 3 months of sneaking around behind my back, laughing at how easily they fooled me. Anna suddenly stood up, looking shocked. Stop this nonsense, she snapped. But Celeste's father stood and said, firmly, sit down. His voice carried the weight of 30 years of respect. Anna sank into her seat like someone had hit her. Nikolai tried to save face. This is a misunderstanding, he said loudly. Celeste turned toward the guests. A misunderstanding? She repeated. Then, why did you spend last night at my parents' house while my dad was planning your bachelor party? Gasps again. Nikolai's face went white. Is it a misunderstanding that you used our joint credit card to buy expensive wine for my mother? Wine that she mentioned to her diary. The same diary where she described your affair in detail? Judge Ryabinin stood, his face full of fury. He looked at his son. Tell me it's not true, he demanded. Nikolai stood there, silent, watching his whole life fall apart in front of everyone. I can explain, he finally said. Celeste's voice was sweet, but cold. Please do. Explain to your father, to your colleagues, to everyone who thought you were a man of honor. Explain how you seduced your fiancé's mother. Explain how you planned to marry me while still sleeping with her. The silence in the temple was heavy. Everyone was staring at Nikolai, waiting for him to say something. But he had nothing. No smart lawyer talk, no jokes to distract anyone, just the ugly truth out in the open. In the front row, Anna was crying. Not soft tears of a proud mom, but loud, messy sobs. She looked broken. She begged her daughter to stop, saying she didn't understand. Celeste turned to her and said, "No, I do understand. You decided my happiness wasn't as important as feeling loved again. You saw my fiancé and decided you wanted him for yourself." Anna whispered, "That's not what I meant." Celeste continued, "You never planned to get caught." That truth just hung in the air like smoke. Her mother slumped into her seat. Her fancy emerald dress now looked cheap and desperate. Celeste looked around at the people in the temple, her family, her friends, co-workers, people who had known her for years. Some looked shocked, some sad, some angry. But no one looked at her with pity. And that mattered to her. She didn't want pity. She told everyone this wasn't about a place or a ceremony. It was about the truth. She wasn't going to build her future on someone else's lies. She was choosing herself over the people who chose each other and left her behind. Then Celeste turned and walked down the aisle. Her long wedding dress train followed behind her like royalty. She stopped by her father, looked him in the eye, and said, "I'm sorry you had to hear this like this. But I'm not sorry, you know." He nodded, tears running down his face, but with pride in his eyes. "I love you," he said. "You did the right thing." Celeste kissed his forehead, tasting his tears, and walked out of the temple. Inside, everything was chaos. Nikolai was trying to explain things to his furious father. Guests were whispering, pointing. Anna was sobbing into her hands. Mrs. Chin from the flower committee looked at her with pure disgust. But Celeste didn't look back. She walked out the big doors, her head held high, her dress trailing behind like a river of silk. Outside, in the church parking lot, Celeste stood by her car. The crisp October air felt fresh and clean. Behind her, she could still hear the noise, voices yelling, chairs moving, people trying to make sense of what just happened.
Her phone buzzed nonstop.
She ignored all the calls and texts except one. It was from Priya. "Holy bleep, Celeste. You actually did it. My editor's gonna freak out when he sees the video. This is going to be everywhere. Are you okay? Like, really okay?"
Celeste thought about it.
She was standing alone in a parking lot, still wearing her wedding dress, after exposing two people and possibly destroying her own reputation. She replied, "I'm fine. No doubt."
And she meant it.
Within an hour, everyone in their circle knew the story. Within 3 hours, it hit local news. Within 6 hours, Revenge Wedding was trending all over social media. Videos were everywhere, and people were talking about every second of what had happened. Celeste had hoped the truth would come out. But the response was even more powerful than she expected. Judge Ryabinin soon released a statement through his law firm. His son was taking an indefinite leave to deal with personal matters. Translation: Nikolai's career was over. No law firm in Moscow wanted to work with Nikolai after what happened. That evening, a courier arrived with a handwritten letter. It was from Nikolai's mother, Victoria Ryabinin. "Dear Celeste, I can't express how horrified I am by my son's actions, or how much I admire your bravery today. You deserved better than this betrayal. Please know that I will always respect and support you. With deep regret, Victoria." The church community at St. Michael the Archangel came together to support Celeste's father. Their kindness made her tear up. By Sunday night, over 100 people had stopped by or called to show love and express how disgusted they were by what had been done to their family. But the most unexpected reaction came from her mother's own social circle, the women Anna had spent years trying to impress with her perfect family. Within a day, Anna was quietly asked to step down from 3 different charity boards. The dinner invites stopped. The phone went silent. Anna Darren, who had built her whole image around being the perfect priest's wife, was now the center of gossip and judgment wherever she went. She tried calling Celeste dozens of times. Celeste didn't answer a single one. 3 days after the ruined wedding, Celeste sat in her dad's office, watching him pack boxes full of books and sermon notes from the past 30 years. She told him again, probably the 10th time, that he didn't have to resign. But he said he did. His voice was tired, but steady. He said he couldn't stand in front of people and talk about the holiness of marriage when his own wife had betrayed theirs. The church deserved better. In just 3 days, her father looked years older. His face was more wrinkled, his shoulders slouched, but there was peace in him too. Like he had finally dropped a weight he didn't know he was carrying. Celeste asked what he planned to do. He told her a small church in Karelia had offered him a temporary position as rector. It would give him space to figure out the future. Celeste looked out the window. Her mother, Anna, was loading suitcases into the car. She was moving in with her sister in St. Petersburg, the only family member who still spoke to her. Celeste asked if her dad had said anything to Anna at all.
He said he had once.
To tell her he filed for divorce. The word hung heavy in the air. Divorce. In their family, divorce had always been unthinkable. Her parents had been married 31 years. Their whole lives were built around the promise of till death do us part. Celeste said she was sorry. Her dad told her not to be. You saved me from living a lie, he said as he sealed another box. He moved slowly, carefully. Then he added something that made Celeste's chest tighten. I'll probably go to my grave, never knowing who I was really married to. Just then, there was a knock at the front door. Celeste's father went to answer it. She kept packing her books. She heard quiet voices in the hallway, then footsteps. Her dad came back into the office, with Judge Ryabinin. He looked almost as worn out as Celeste's father. His suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were dark and tired. Celeste stood up and adjusted her jeans. I didn't expect to see you, she said. The judge replied, I should have come sooner. To apologize for my son, for what he did to you, and for how both our families have suffered. Celeste studied his face. She looked for signs of pride or defensiveness, but saw only real regret. She thanked him, but said he wasn't the one responsible for Nikolai's actions. Judge Ryabinin gave a bitter laugh. Isn't that the thing, he said. I raised him. I taught him he could have anything he wanted, that being charming and good-looking would always be enough. I created the man who betrayed you. Celeste looked at the judge and said clearly, no. He raised his son. She believed that Nikolai had chosen to be the kind of man who had no honor. That choice was on him. Judge Ryabinin nodded slowly. He said that he and his wife Victoria were going to counseling, trying to understand where they went wrong and how they had failed their son. Celeste told him not to let those mistakes ruin his whole marriage. She said, some people are just broken inside. That doesn't mean everyone who loves them is broken too. The judge stared at her for a moment. Then he said, you're incredible. Do you know most people would have been destroyed by what happened to you? But instead, you're sitting here giving advice to an old fool like me. Celeste smiled and said she learned from the best, looking at her father. After the judge left, she and her dad finished packing. They didn't say much, but it was a peaceful silence. As the sun set, the light turned the office golden. Her father taped up the last box and looked around the room, his quiet place for over 10 years. Celeste asked him if he regretted the divorce. He paused, then said, I raised a daughter who chose truth over comfort. I will never regret that. 6 months later, Celeste was standing in the garden behind her new apartment in Alexandrov. Spring was finally arriving. Pink cherry blossoms were blooming, and the air smelled like fresh grass and hope. Her phone rang. It was her father's weekly call. Without waiting, Celeste asked, How's Karelia? Her dad said it was beautiful and quiet. The church was small but full of kind, honest people. No gossip, no drama. Just faith and good company. She asked if he was happy. He said, getting there. Then he asked her about her new job. 3 months earlier, Celeste had accepted a job as editor-in-chief at a top publishing house in St. Petersburg. The pay was good, the work was meaningful, and best of all, she was 300 kilometers away from everything that had happened. She told her dad honestly that she liked it there, the city, the job, the freedom. She could walk around and just be Celeste, not the woman from that wedding video. Her dad said, good. You deserve a fresh start. The wedding video had gone viral for a while, but eventually it faded as new scandals popped up. But for a few weeks, Celeste became a symbol, someone who chose dignity over silence, truth over comfort. It was overwhelming at first, but in the end, it gave her strength. Thousands of women had sent her messages, sharing their own stories of betrayal and thanking her for reminding them. "You can choose yourself," her dad asked as he always did. "Any news about her?" Celeste said, "No, and I don't want any." Her mom, Anna, had tried reaching out through different people, an aunt, old friends, even a past boss. But Celeste told them all the same thing. She had nothing to say to her mother. Some betrayals go too deep to just forgive and pretend nothing happened. Maybe one day she'd speak to her again, but not today. Then he asked about Nikolai. His lawyer had contacted hers last month. He said Nikolai was in therapy and wanted to do better. Celeste had laughed, not in anger, just without care anymore. She told her lawyer to let him know that the best thing he could do was leave her alone forever. After the call, Celeste went back outside to her garden with a cup of coffee and a manuscript she was editing. It was a memoir by a woman who had rebuilt her life after finding out her husband had been cheating for 20 years. Celeste couldn't help but see the similarities to her own story. But now, instead of focusing on betrayal, she focused on stories of survival and strength.
The doorbell rang.
She wasn't expecting anyone. But when she opened the door, a delivery man stood there with a huge bouquet of wildflowers, the kind she had wanted for her wedding, not the roses her mother picked. There was a small card attached. It read, "Choose yourself. From someone who understands. A friend." No name. No return address. But she didn't need one. In the past few months, Celeste had talked to many women. Women who found the courage to leave bad relationships, speak the truth, and choose their own happiness instead of making others comfortable. These women supported each other like sisters. Celeste placed the wildflowers in a vase on the kitchen table. Their simple beauty brightened the room. Then she went back to the garden, to her book, and to the life she was building, one choice at a time. A year later, Celeste stood on a stage at the Meridian Hotel, in front of a large crowd of writers, publishers, and readers. She was the keynote speaker at a national conference about women's writing. A sign read, "Celeste Stern, the power of the authentic voice." A year ago, she had stood at a wedding altar and made a choice, not the one people expected, but the one that was true to her heart. Now, in the audience, women listened closely, some nodding. Her story had inspired many, not because of the drama, but because of the truth in it. She spoke honestly. We're taught from a young age to keep the peace, to be nice, to stay quiet for the comfort of others. But the truth matters more. Celeste paused and remembered the moment, that morning in the hotel, when she looked in the mirror and chose a new path. She continued, "When you choose truth instead of comfort, when you choose yourself over people who betrayed you, you don't just change your life, you give others permission to do the same." The audience applauded, long and warmly. After her speech, many women came up to thank her and share their own stories of courage and honesty. That night, back in her hotel room, Celeste sat with a glass of wine and read messages from women online. Most of them said the same thing. "Thank you for showing me it's possible. Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for not staying silent." Then a text came from her father. "Watched your speech online. Mom would be proud." Celeste looked at the message for a while. He meant her grandmother, the one whose wedding veil she wore that day. The one who taught her that real strength looks like grace. Who taught her that love doesn't mean supporting cruelty. But part of her wondered if her dad also meant Anna, her mother. Maybe, somewhere in St. Petersburg, Anna was watching. Maybe she felt a mix of regret and pride. Celeste would probably never know, and that was okay. Outside the hotel window, St. Petersburg sparkled like diamonds in the night. Millions of people out there were making choices. Some brave, some not. Some that could change everything. Celeste raised her glass. A toast to everyone choosing themselves. To the ones who speak the truth even when it's hard. To the ones who walk away from fake happy endings. To those who choose freedom, even when it's lonely. She thought of herself, standing at that altar, telling the truth to people who wanted to believe a lie. She finished her wine, closed her laptop, and got ready for bed. Tomorrow, she'd go back to her life in St. Petersburg.
To her job.
To her small apartment. To her garden filled with wildflowers. to a life she built herself, not based on anyone else's story, but on her own unshakable truth. And maybe that wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was something better. A brand new beginning that belonged only to her. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's setting yourself free. Sometimes, the strongest thing a woman can do is choose herself, especially when the world wants her to stay quiet. And the best kind of happiness? The kind you build when you finally put your own truth first.